Welcome to Life Stories, where the unexpected twists of life unfold in ways we never see coming. Today's story is one of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, redemption. Imagine finding out that the person you trusted the most, the one you've built a life with, has been secretly plotting against you. What would you do when the truth comes crashing down on Christmas night? Stay tuned as we dive into a tale of love, deceit, and the powerful lessons learned along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to start today's story. Let's get started. Christmas has always been a time for family, laughter, and the warmth of togetherness. But that year, everything changed in a single moment. I had no idea that my life, my marriage, and my perception of everything I thought I knew would come crashing down in front of my eyes. It was supposed to be a quiet, peaceful evening, just like every other Christmas. But instead, it became the night that I discovered the truth about my husband, Ben, and his sister, Emily. The evening had been a blur of conversations, gifts, and the faint scent of pine in the air. The house was alive with the kind of chatter that always filled our family gatherings. Ben was there, sitting beside me with a faint smile on his face. And his sister Emily, as usual, was hovering too close for comfort. Emily and Ben had been inseparable growing up, and I had always felt a quiet discomfort whenever she would pop in unannounced. She was always there, on our date nights, during our vacations, even at the oddest moments when we argued. At first, I thought it was just a close sibling relationship. But as time went on, it began to feel like something more. I should have listened to those instincts. But I didn't. I trusted Ben. Dinner had been served, and we all settled into the living room with our drinks, exchanging small talk. I felt content, even happy. It had been a busy year, and this holiday felt like a well-deserved break. Then, Emily handed me a gift, wrapped in beautiful paper with a silver bow. I was taken aback. It wasn't our tradition for gifts to be handed out so early. Especially not from Emily, but I smiled, curious and excited to open it. Go ahead, Emily said with that smile, one I couldn't quite place. It was a smile I didn't trust. Not then, but I dismissed it as nothing more than my own growing unease. I pulled back the paper, revealing a sleek, manila envelope. My heart skipped a beat. I opened it slowly, my mind working in fragments, struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. Inside, there was a stack of papers. At first, it didn't register. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, each one seeming to pull me further into a storm I wasn't ready for. Then, it hit me, a divorce packet. Already signed by Ben, his signature, his initials, everything. I froze. My heart raced, but I couldn't move. My hands shook as I stared at the papers in disbelief. My mind screamed, but my body was numb. I looked up at Ben, hoping for an explanation, for some sign of the man I thought I knew. But he didn't say a word. He sat there, his eyes fixed on the floor, avoiding mine like he had done so many times in recent months. He was silent, as though everything about us, everything we had built together, meant nothing. I glanced at Emily. She was smirking now, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite understand. He belongs with me, she said, her voice low, almost smug. The room went quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your chest, making it hard to breathe. I could hear my in-laws in the background, their shocked gazes flicking between me, Ben, and Emily. My mother-in-law's lips parted slightly, her eyes wide in confusion. My father-in-law let out a slow sigh, his disappointment palpable in the air. Ben still wouldn't meet my eyes. He just sat there, rigid, his jaw clenched in a way that I hadn't seen in years. It was as though he had already made up his mind. It was like I didn't even exist to him anymore. The woman I had trusted, the man I had loved for 8 years, both of them were strangers now. It felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The weight of betrayal was so sharp, so immediate, that I could hardly breathe. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it, but all I could feel was a deep, aching emptiness. But I didn't cry, not then. Instead, I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and forced a smile onto my face. Then you'll love my gift, I said, my voice even, calm. Emily's smirk faltered for just a moment, but I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes as she hesitated before taking the envelope I handed her. Her curiosity had been piqued, and I could feel the tension in the room tightening as she opened it. The next moment, the look on her face, shock, then fear, was enough to shatter the facade. She let out a scream, not just of surprise, but of sheer panic. She scrambled to look through the pages, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Ben's face lost all color. I knew then that the game had changed. The moment Emily's scream echoed through the room, everything changed. Her reaction wasn't just shock, it was raw fear. It was as if the walls had come crashing down around her. And she realized, too late, that she wasn't the one in control anymore. She clutched the papers, trembling, as if holding them tightly would somehow erase the truth they revealed. But it was too late. The truth was already out. Ben bolted upright from his seat, panic flashing in his eyes as he shot a look at Emily. "What did you do?" His voice was sharp, but there was a hint of panic underlying it. His hands trembled as he reached for the papers, snatching them from Emily's grasp as though they might disappear if he didn't act fast. I watched him, a sense of calm washing over me. All those months of wondering, of second-guessing myself, of feeling that something was wrong, it was all coming to fruition now. I'd suspected for a while. Ben had been distant, coming home late, guarding his phone like it held some precious secret. But it wasn't just that. He had been pulling away in subtle, insidious ways. Then there was Emily, always just a little too present, a little too eager to insert herself into our lives. There was something unsettling about the way she would smile, this knowing, almost smug smile, like she was privy to some secret that I wasn't. I should have trusted my gut. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply watched. My mind, despite the chaos, was remarkably clear. I had done my homework. I had been watching and waiting for this moment for months. "Keep reading," I said softly, my voice steady. Ben's eyes widened as he turned the page. He didn't expect what he saw next. There, in black and white, was an official legal notice from my lawyer. It was a formal lawsuit, a case for fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. I had gathered all the evidence, meticulously documenting every transaction, every forged signature, every piece of damning proof. The look on Ben's face, a mixture of disbelief and horror, was priceless. The room was silent. I could hear the soft crackling of the fireplace, the only sound filling the heavy void left by the unfolding drama. My mother-in-law's face twisted in confusion as she scanned the papers. Then, as the reality of what she was reading sank in, her expression morphed into one of horror. "You can't do this," Ben finally croaked, his voice shaking. He turned to me, his face pale, desperation in his eyes. "We're married. That money is ours." I shook my head, calm and composed. "No, Ben, my money, my business, you stole from me." My voice was steady, but inside, I felt a wave of satisfaction. All the anger, all the betrayal, was now justified. The evidence I had gathered wasn't just going to ruin his life. It was going to ruin Emily's too. They had thought they could get away with it, but I had outsmarted them both. "You shouldn't have tried to take everything," I continued. "You thought I wouldn't find out? You thought I wouldn't notice the money disappearing? The fraudulent loans? The transactions to Emily's account?" Ben's face was twisted in a grimace. But he didn't have a response. He knew I was right. "Keep reading," I repeated. I wanted him to see everything, the full extent of their betrayal. I wanted him to know that not only had they stolen from me, but they had put themselves in a position where they were breaking the law. I wasn't just going to divorce him. I was going to make sure they both paid for what they had done. The tension in the room was suffocating. Ben's hands were shaking, his face ashen as he flipped through the pages, desperately trying to make sense of the legal documents in front of him. I could feel the eyes of the family on us, the heavy weight of their disbelief and confusion hanging in the air. But I wasn't going to let this moment slip away. I had worked too hard to get here. They were going to understand what they had done. And they were going to face the consequences. "What is this?" Ben muttered, his voice cracking as he read through the fraud charges and the accusations of money laundering. His face went even paler. The color drained from it completely. The shock was evident. He had no idea that I had gone this far. That's what hurt the most. He had underestimated me, thought I would just sit back and let him destroy everything we had built together. But I wasn't the woman he thought I was. "You really thought I wouldn't find out?" I said, my voice colder now. "You thought I wouldn't catch on to the fake signatures, the missing money, the lies you've been feeding me? You really thought I would just let you and Emily walk away with everything?" Ben's eyes flicked to Emily, who was standing there, her face ashen, her lips trembling. She had been silent, but the terror in her eyes told me everything. She knew exactly what was at stake now. Their little scheme wasn't just a betrayal, it was criminal. They had crossed a line that they couldn't erase with charm or empty apologies. I pulled out my final trump card, a small USB drive. I handed it to my father-in-law, who looked at me with confusion. But I could see the moment his gaze shifted. The instant he realized that I wasn't bluffing. He inserted the drive into the television. And the screen flickered to life. It was a security camera footage from a hotel lobby. There they were, Ben and Emily, kissing, holding hands, walking into a room together. The gasps that followed were deafening. My mother-in-law was the first to speak, her voice trembling in disbelief. "Ben, Emily, how could you?" Ben stood frozen, his eyes wide as he stared at the screen, his whole body shaking. Emily's face twisted in horror. And for a brief moment, I almost felt a twinge of pity for her. But then I remembered everything. How she had gleefully handed me that divorce packet. How she had rubbed her affair in my face. How she had played me for a fool. But no more. The truth was out, and there was no going back. "Happy Christmas," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Ben turned to Emily, his panic escalating as he hissed, "What is this? What the hell is going on?" But it wasn't just the affair that was going to bring them down. As they continued to scramble, trying to cover their tracks, I saw it, the arrest warrant. It was the last page of the evidence I had gathered, the final piece of the puzzle. The room fell silent again. This time, it wasn't the silence of disbelief, it was the heavy weight of impending doom. Ben, Emily, my in-laws, and I were all caught in this moment, suspended in the horror of their choices. I had already made the call to the IRS, alerted the authorities, and provided everything they needed. The paper trail was undeniable. And I wasn't going to back down now. I had spent weeks working with my lawyer, collecting the evidence, and making sure that nothing was left to chance. I was going to make sure they faced every last consequence of their actions. Ben looked at me, his voice shaking. You can't?" "Oh, I can," I said, my voice steady, "and I already have." The sirens outside began to wail. Ryan froze. Emily collapsed into the nearest chair, her eyes wide with panic. But I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. I was done. As the police arrived, Ben's face was a mixture of desperation and fear. He tried to make a run for it, but one of the officers quickly tackled him to the ground. Emily screamed, but it was too late. The truth had already crushed their lies, and nothing could undo what they had done. As I watched them both being escorted away, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. The betrayal had been deep, but now, I had control of my life again. I wasn't a victim anymore, I was free. I moved to New York, my business stronger than ever. And for the first time in years, I was truly happy. If you enjoyed this life story, don't forget to subscribe and follow for more. Life has a way of teaching us the hardest lessons. But in the end, we always emerge stronger. Keep going, because your story is still being written.